I think it's kind of funny that the main character of Invincible is probably one of the weakest people in the show. Like, seriously. Every other episode, this dude is getting thrown into buildings, punched into mountains, and turned into what I think I could best describe as a puddle. If you only watch the fight scenes, you'd probably wonder how the guy is even still alive, and yet he's probably my favorite superhero. Not because he's the strongest, because he isn't. Not because he always wins, because he also doesn't. It's probably because in a world where basically everybody with power starts believing they're above everyone else, Mark doesn't ever really get to that point. I think that's what makes him so interesting, because Invincible isn't asking what would happen if Superman got angry. It's like, what kind of person would you be if you had the power to do almost anything? Would you become an omni-man? Would you become a Viltrumite? Would you stop caring about people because they're weaker than you? And Mark gets asked that question like a million times throughout the entire show, and it feels like every time he answers the same way and chooses to stay human. Not like biologically or mentally. Like, it's just morally. Before I get too deep into why Mark works as a character, I feel like I should probably explain what Invincible is. Because, like, on the surface, it kind of looks like a pretty standard superhero story. You have a teenage who gets superpowers, has a famous superhero dad, and decides he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps. Sounds familiar. Kind of like Superman or Spider-Man. You know, that kind of thing. But Invincible takes that idea and is like, okay, what if this was real life? Not like just the fun parts, not flying around, stopping bank robberies, getting cheered on by everyone. You know, I mean like the consequences. What happens when someone has the power to level a city but still has to deal with high school problems? Like, what happens when saving the world means watching a bunch of people still get hurt? What happens when you're supposed to look up to this person and they end up being the exact opposite of what you thought they were? And that's essentially the foundation of Invincible. The story follows Mark Grayson, normal teenager, find out he inherited superpowers from his dad, Nolan. Omni-Man is basically Superman. He's like the strongest being on the planet, protected humanity for years, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's Omni-Man, and they think he's like perfect. So Mark thinks he's going to follow the same path. He thinks becoming a superhero is going to be this amazing opportunity, help people, make a difference, but it's like immediately that Mark figures out that being a superhero isn't like simple. The world of Invincible is violent, it's messy, people don't always make the right choices, and that's why I think Invincible is so interesting and has drawn so many people in. He's not just learning how to use his powers, he's like learning what kind of person to be. And when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are like, oh, strength is everything, characters like Omni-Man, you know, the Viltrumites, holding on to humanity is like a way harder thing to do than it would be in any other superhero show. So I think here is where a lot of people kind of like miss the entire point of Invincible. Mark does get stronger, but I think that's also just part of being a superhero. Like, he can fly, he's faster than almost everyone, he's insanely durable. That's cool. But, I mean, like, if you took all of that away, I still think he would be an interesting character. Because what makes Mark so, like, compelling isn't what he can do, it's the way that he thinks. There's this, like, expectation in Invincible that strength automatically makes you better than everyone else. The Viltrumites basically built their entire society around just that idea. If you're stronger, you're more important. If you're weaker, then, like, good luck, I guess. To them, compassion is almost seen as, like, this flaw. It's something that gets in the way, but, like, Mark doesn't buy into that. Even after everything he goes through, after everybody trying to kill him, watching his dad turn a city into, like, confetti with blood, he still stops to help people. He's, like, still worried about strangers. He feels guilty when he can't save someone. And I love that. Because I think if I'm being honest, it's easier if he didn't. And it would be easier to be numb, I would say. And it would be easier to just say, well, that's how the world works. But that's not really who I think the biggest thing that separates Mark from a lot of superheroes is that he actually lets things affect him and get to him. And I don't mean that he gets sad once in a while and then just moves on. I mean, like, everything sticks with him. Every person he fails to save, every mistake he makes, all of the people he hurts, even when it wasn't purposeful. A lot of superheroes have this ability to just keep moving forward. They put on the suit, stop the bad guy, go home. But in Invincible, Mark doesn't work like that. He carries everything with him, and honestly, it almost feels like a weakness, because being this emotionally affected by everything just has to make his life harder. He could probably make things easier for himself if he just stopped caring, if he thought like the Viltrumites do, if he looked at people and saw numbers instead of lives, but he doesn't do that. Mark's biggest strength is also his biggest burden, and it's that he cares too much. And that's something I think a lot of people can relate to, because being a good person isn't always easy. Sometimes, I mean, like, caring means you're the one who gets hurt. Sometimes it's like doing the right thing means you're the one that has to get rid of something, sacrifice it, you know? And Mark keeps learning that lesson, and he learns it over and over again, but he just doesn't stop caring. Something else that makes Mark such an interesting superhero is that he's not afraid to admit when he's scared. And that sounds really simple in writing, but it separates him from a lot of other powerful characters. A lot of superheroes are written as these, like, constantly confident, unstoppable, strong people. They walk into a room and they know exactly what they're doing, and everyone's like, oh, they have the answers. But Mark's not like that. Like, a lot of the time, he has no idea what he's doing. He's scared, confused. He's trying to figure out the right thing to do while everything around him is just crumbling. And honestly, I feel like that makes him feel way more real. Because if suddenly you had the power to just throw a building across a city, you wouldn't instantly become this perfect symbol of justice. You'd still be the same person you were before, with doubts, and you'd still make mistakes and wonder if you're doing the right thing, but, like, Mark's powers don't erase his humanity. If anything, I feel like they make his humanity stand out more, because even with all that strength, he's still just this, like, high school kid trying to figure things out. I think the most interesting conflict in Invincible isn't that Mark fights villains on the daily. I think it's Mark fighting the possibility that he could become his father. Because Omni-Man represents, like, everything Mark could become. Power, strength, too much confidence, and the loss of empathy. And that scares the living shit out of Mark, because in a way he sees himself in his father. They've got the same powers, blood, potential. So Mark is constantly asking himself, like, if I have the ability to do what he does, what's stopping me from becoming him? And the answer isn't his powers, it's his choices. And I think that's what makes Mark different. Omni-Man believes that his strength gives him the right to decide what's best for everyone else, and Mark believes that the strength that he has gives him the responsibility to protect everyone else. And I think that's where those two differ and separate. Even though those two ideas sound so similar, they're so different. Because at the end of the day, Mark's greatest victory, it's not beating someone stronger than him. It's proving that power doesn't have to mean you lose your compassion. Mark doesn't stay compassionate and human because he's weak. He stays human and compassionate because he has that choice. Hey, I know it's been a really long time since I've, checked in and posted something, but I just want to thank everybody that clicked on this video. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, comment, whatever feels right for you. And until I see you guys again, stay strong, stay invincible, and I'll see you next time.